Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where the air smells like iron and smoke, and every second feels like it's slipping through your fingers faster than you can catch it. You don't ease into this role, you're thrown into it, boots barely settled before someone is already shouting your name. Somewhere nearby, a man is screaming, and you don't yet know if you're ready for what that sound really means. There's no gentle learning curve here, no quiet first day, just chaos, urgency, and the unsettling realization that you're expected to fix the unfixable. And just so we're clear, you probably won't survive this. Not in the way you think, anyway. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive not with confidence, but with a kind of quiet dread you try to hide behind busy hands. The battlefield isn't some distant line, it's everywhere. Wagons creak past you, stacked with bodies that are still breathing, barely. Some are whispering for water. Others are eerily silent, eyes open, staring past you like you're already too late. You're a surgeon now, or at least that's what they're calling you. Back home, that word carried weight, years of study, careful training, maybe even respect. Here, it feels almost like a joke. Your training, if you can call it that, is thin. Maybe you attended a few lectures, watched a handful of procedures. In the mid-19th century, formal medical education varies wildly. Some surgeons have real schooling. Others learned through apprenticeships that barely skim the surface. One widely accepted fact is that during the American Civil War, many surgeons had less than 2 years of formal medical training. 2 years! And now you're standing in a place where men's lives depend on decisions you have to make in seconds. You barely have time to process that before someone grabs your arm and pulls you toward a makeshift tent. Inside, it's worse. The smell hits first, thick, metallic, and sour. Blood, sweat, mud, and something else you can't quite name yet but will soon learn to recognize instantly. The tent is dim, lit by lanterns that flicker just enough to make everything feel unstable. Shadows stretch and bend across rows of men laid out side by side. Some clutch at their wounds, some clutch at nothing at all. A soldier groans as you kneel beside him. His uniform is torn open, dark with blood. You hesitate, not outwardly, of course. Outwardly, you're already reaching for tools, asking questions, doing what you think you're supposed to do. But inside, there's a pause, a flicker of doubt. What exactly are you supposed to do? You don't have modern diagnostics, no x-rays, no sterile gloves, no antibiotics. Your understanding of infection is limited at best. Germ theory isn't widely accepted yet. Many still believe disease comes from bad air, what they call miasma. So you're working in conditions that would make any modern doctor recoil, and you don't even fully realize how dangerous it all is. Scholars still argue whether the lack of germ theory was the biggest factor in Civil War medical deaths or if it was simply the overwhelming scale of injuries. Standing here, though, it doesn't feel like a debate. It feels like everything is a problem all at once. Someone hands you a set of instruments. They're heavier than you expected, cold, worn, and not nearly as clean as you'd like. You notice faint stains that didn't quite wash out. There's no time to question it, no time to ask where they've been. Another surgeon brushes past you, sleeves rolled up, hands already stained. He doesn't look at you for long, just enough to size you up. "Keep moving," he mutters. "They don't wait." And that's the first real lesson you learn. They don't wait. Not for your nerves to settle, not for your skills to catch up, not for you to become ready. Outside, the distant rumble of artillery rolls like thunder. each boom is followed inevitably by more wagons, more bodies, more decisions. You begin to understand that this isn't just medicine, it's triage on a scale that feels almost inhuman. You're not just treating patients, you're choosing them. Who gets attention first? Who can wait? Who won't make it no matter what? It's a quiet, horrifying kind of power, and it settles on your shoulders whether you want it or not. A young boy, he can't be more than 16, grabs your sleeve. His face is pale beneath the grime, lips trembling. "Doc, am I going to be all right?" You look at him, really look at him, and for a moment, the chaos fades. It's just you and him, a question hanging in the air that you don't have the answer to. You've barely begun, and already you're expected to lie convincingly. "Yeah, you'll be all right," you hear yourself say. It's automatic, almost instinctive, because what else can you say? Oddly, you notice something small, almost absurd in the middle of all this. Someone nearby is humming, a low, steady tune, completely out of place. You glance over and see a soldier, arm bandaged, sitting upright as he hums to himself like he's anywhere but here. It's strangely calming and deeply unsettling at the same time. You'll come to learn that little quirks like this are everywhere. Men whistling, joking, even laughing in moments that feel completely wrong for it. It's not madness exactly, it's survival. You adjust your grip on the instruments and turn back to your patient. Your hands move before your mind fully catches up. You press here, cut there, doing what you've seen, what you remember, what you hope is right. There's no supervisor looking over your shoulder, no safety net. Just you, and the growing realization that every action you take carries weight you're not sure you can bear. Time begins to blur. Minutes stretch and collapse into each other. One patient becomes another, then another. Faces start to blend together, expressions repeating, pain, fear, hope, resignation. You lose track of how long you've been working. An hour? 3? It doesn't matter. Your world shrinks to this tent, this table, these hands. Outside, the war continues. Inside, a different kind of battle unfolds, quieter but no less brutal. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a thought begins to take root. This isn't what you imagined, not even close. You thought you'd be saving lives one careful step at a time, but here it feels more like you're holding back a tide with your bare hands. For every man you help, another takes his place. For every small victory, there's a loss waiting just around the corner. You're not just fighting injury, you're fighting time, ignorance, exhaustion, and a system that was never built for something like this. And you've only just arrived. The first time you truly understand what pain means here, it isn't from a scream. It's from the silence just before it. You're handed another patient, this time with urgency that feels sharper than before. The man is clutching his leg, or what's left of it, his knuckles white, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. His eyes lock onto yours, not with hope, but with a kind of desperate calculation, like he's trying to read your face for answers you don't have. "Hold him down," someone says behind you. And just like that, you realize what's missing. There's no neat little tray of modern anesthesia, no gentle countdown, no drifting off to sleep. At best, there is chloroform. Maybe. A cloth appears, damp with something sharp-smelling. It's pressed toward the soldier's face, and for a moment, you feel relief. This is it, you think. This is how you make it bearable. But then you notice how loosely it's applied, how uncertain the dosage is. Too little, and the man will feel everything. Too much, and he might not wake up at all. That's the gamble. Chloroform and ether were used during the American Civil War. It's a well-established fact, but supply, experience, and conditions varied wildly. Some surgeons became skilled at administering it, others less so. On certain battlefields, anesthesia was available for the majority of operations. On others, it ran out quickly, leaving you with nothing but speed and restraint. Scholars still argue whether Civil War surgery was as universally agonizing as popular myth suggests, or if anesthesia was more commonly used than we imagine. Standing here, though, it doesn't feel like a myth. It feels like a coin toss. The cloth is held in place. The soldier inhales, once, twice, then his body jerks. Not asleep, not even close. Not enough, someone mutters. There's no time to adjust carefully, no time to calculate doses like a modern anesthesiologist would. You're already behind. The bleeding won't wait for perfection. Go, the other surgeon says. And so you do. The first cut is where the world seems to narrow into a single, unbearable moment. The man's body reacts instantly, muscles tightening, back arching, a raw, guttural sound tearing out of him that doesn't even sound human anymore. You feel it more than hear it. Your hands hesitate for half a heartbeat, just enough to register what you're doing. Then they keep moving, because stopping would be worse. You work faster now, not out of confidence, but necessity. Every second you take is another second of agony for him, another second where things can go wrong. Speed becomes its own kind of mercy. Around you, others hold him down. One grips his shoulders, another braces what remains of his leg. There's no elegance here, no calm surgical fear. It's controlled chaos, driven by urgency and a shared understanding that this is the only way through. Oddly, your mind starts to latch on to small details again, like it's trying to protect you from the bigger picture. The way the lantern light flickers across the blade, the rough texture of the wooden table beneath your hands, the rhythm of your own breathing, faster than you realize. And then something strange. The soldier starts laughing. It's not loud, not joyful, more like a broken, breathless chuckle that slips out between gasps. For a second, it throws you off completely. This isn't how this is supposed to go. But you'll learn that pain does strange things to people. Some scream, some go silent, and some laugh as if their minds have decided this reality is too much to process normally. You don't have time to dwell on it. The procedure continues, your movements becoming more automatic, more detached. Not because you don't care, but because caring too much, too openly, would paralyze you. You begin to understand why older surgeons seem different. It's not that they're cruel, it's that they've built walls. Without them, this job would break you within hours. Another assistant wipes your brow, though you don't remember sweating this much. Your arms ache already, and you're only a short way into what needs to be done. The tools in your hands feel heavier now, not just physically, but mentally. Every action is final. There's no undo. Somewhere nearby, another patient cries out, the sound rising and falling like a wave. It blends with others until the entire tent feels alive with noise, pain layered over pain, each voice distinct and yet part of something overwhelming. You focus on your own task. One man, one procedure, one chance. That's how you survive this mentally. You narrow your world down to something manageable, because if you let yourself think about all of them at once, you won't be able to move. Eventually, though it feels like both seconds and hours, you reach a stopping point. The worst of it is over. The soldier's body slackens slightly, exhaustion overtaking resistance. His breathing is uneven, but still there, alive. For now. You step back just enough to let someone else take over the next stage. Your hands tremble slightly, and you quickly clench them into fists, hoping no one notices. But of course, they do. The same surgeon from earlier glances at you again, this time with something almost like recognition. You get used to it, he says. You're not sure if that's comforting or terrifying, because part of you doesn't want to get used to this. And yet, you already feel the edges of that resistance softening, not gone, just shifting, adapting. Outside, more wagons arrive. Inside, more bodies are carried in. The rhythm doesn't stop. It doesn't even slow.
You realize now that pain isn't an exception here, it's the baseline, something constant, expected, almost routine. And your role in it isn't just to heal, it's to navigate it, to decide how much can be reduced, how much must be endured, and how quickly you can move through it before the next man takes his place. You glance down at your hands again. They're steadier now, not because the situation has improved, but because you're changing, and that might be the most unsettling part of all.
You don't get a moment to recover from what you've just done. There's no quiet pause, no deep breath where you step outside and let your hands stop shaking. Instead, someone is already calling for you again, voice cutting through the noise with a kind of practiced urgency. Next one, leg's gone bad, hurry! And just like that, you're moving. This time, there's no hesitation about what needs to happen. The moment you see the wound, you know. The leg is shattered, torn apart in a way that no careful stitching or hopeful thinking will fix. Bone fragments, darkened flesh, and a smell that's different from fresh blood, heavier, wrong somehow. You've heard about this. Gangrene. It's one of the most feared words in your new world, even if people don't fully understand why it spreads. Without antibiotics, once infection sets in deeply, there's often only one real option left: cut it off. Amputation becomes not just a procedure, but a routine, a grim, repetitive solution to a problem that keeps arriving in endless waves. During the American Civil War, it's estimated that tens of thousands of amputations were performed. Some sources suggest over 60,000. The numbers blur together, but the reality doesn't. You're about to add one more to that count. The man on the table is barely conscious, his head lolling slightly as someone tries to keep him awake. There's a strange urgency in that, too, keeping him just conscious enough to survive the shock, but not so aware that he fights you. Ready? Someone asks. You nod, even though ready feels like the wrong word. The tools are placed in your hands again, familiar now, too familiar. And then you notice something that makes your stomach tighten. A pile. Off to the side of the tent, partially covered by a cloth that doesn't quite do its job, there's a stack of limbs, arms, legs, some still in uniform boots, others bare, pale against the dim light. For a second, your brain refuses to process it properly. It tries to categorize it as something else, logs maybe, firewood. But you know what it is. This is the assembly line. You've stepped into a system where the same procedure is repeated over and over, not because anyone wants it to be, but because it's the only way to keep up. Surgeons during this time often became incredibly fast at amputations. In fact, some could complete one in under 10 minutes. Speed isn't a bonus here, it's survival. Scholars still argue whether this focus on speed sacrificed precision or if it was the only humane response to the conditions. As you stand here preparing to begin, it doesn't feel like a philosophical question. It feels like a ticking clock. The chloroform is attempted again, but like before, it's imperfect. The man groans, his body reacting just enough to remind you that he's still very much aware. Go, comes the voice again. And so you begin. This time your movements are quicker, more decisive, not because you've mastered the technique, but because you've learned what hesitation costs. The sound is something you try not to focus on. Instead, you concentrate on a rhythm, a sequence of steps you repeat in your mind like a quiet mantra. Cut, separate, control the bleeding, move forward. Your world narrows again, shrinking down to the task in front of you. But it's harder to ignore everything else. The pile in the corner, the constant flow of new patients, the realization that this isn't an exception, it's the system. You're part of something that feels almost industrial, like a factory where the product is survival and the cost is measured in pieces. Oddly, you catch another glimpse of that same strange human resilience. One of the assistants, barely older than a boy, is talking softly to the patient as you work.
You'll be dancing again, you hear me? He says, almost cheerfully. It's absurd. Dancing? In this place? And yet, the tone isn't mocking. It's hopeful, or maybe just necessary. A small thread of normalcy in a situation that has none. You realize that everyone here is coping in their own way. Some build emotional walls, some joke, some make promises they can't possibly guarantee. And you focus on the work, because the alternative is to think about what this all means, and that's a dangerous path. Time blurs again as you move through the procedure. Your arms are already tired, your back starting to ache from the constant strain. The heat inside the tent feels heavier now, thickened by bodies and effort and something unspoken. When you finally reach the end, there's no sense of accomplishment, just completion. The man is still breathing, barely, but it's there. Another life pulled, at least temporarily, from the edge. You step back, and for a moment, your gaze drifts again to that pile. It's bigger now, or maybe you're just noticing it more. Either way, it hits you differently this time. Each one of those limbs belonged to someone who walked, ran, lived a life before this moment. Each one is a story abruptly changed, redirected into something uncertain. And you're the one who made that cut. The thought lingers longer than you'd like, but there's no time to sit with it. There never is. Another patient is already being brought in, the cycle continuing without a pause. The rhythm of this place doesn't allow for reflection, it demands motion. You wipe your hands quickly, though the stains never fully leave. You adjust your grip, steady your breathing, and step forward again. Because that's what this has become. Not a series of individual moments, but a continuous flow, one that carries you along whether you're ready or not. You realize now that being a surgeon here isn't about mastering a craft in the traditional sense. It's about endurance, physical, mental, emotional. How long you can keep going, how much you can see, do, and feel before something inside you starts to give. And as you move toward the next table, hearing the familiar mix of voices and pain and urgency, a quiet thought settles in the back of your mind. You're getting faster. Not better, necessarily, just faster. And in this place, that might be the only thing that matters.
You step out of the tent for what feels like the first time in hours. Maybe it's minutes, maybe longer. Time doesn't behave normally here. It stretches, folds, disappears. But the moment you push past the canvas flap, you realize something unsettling. The outside isn't relief. It's just more of the same, spread wider. Before you, the field hospital unfolds in a way that makes your chest tighten. Rows of tents stretch across the uneven ground, some neatly arranged, others thrown up wherever space allowed. Wagons creak in and out like a constant tide, each one carrying more men than it should, piled together in ways that make it hard to tell where one body ends and another begins. This isn't a hospital in the way you imagined. It's a system barely holding itself together. During the American Civil War, field hospitals were often set up near battlefields, sometimes in barns, churches, or even open fields. One well-known fact is that after major battles like Battle of Gettysburg, thousands of wounded soldiers overwhelmed medical facilities within hours. Surgeons like you didn't have the luxury of space, order, or even enough hands to manage it all. Looking around, that reality becomes painfully clear. Men lie on the ground outside the tents, waiting. Some are bandaged, some aren't. A few stare up at the sky with an eerie calm, as if they've drifted somewhere far beyond this place. Others call out weakly, their voices blending into a low, constant murmur that hangs over everything like a fog. You walk between them carefully, stepping over outstretched arms, discarded equipment, and patches of earth turned dark and sticky. The ground itself feels like part of the hospital now, absorbing everything, holding on to it.
A soldier grabs at your coat as you pass. "Doc, please." His voice is barely more than a whisper, but it cuts through everything else. You glance down, and for a moment, you hesitate again. Not because you don't want to help, but because you're starting to understand something terrible. You can't help everyone. Triage isn't just a concept anymore. It's a reality you're forced to live with every second. Patients are sorted not by who arrived first, but by who has the best chance of survival. Those who can wait are set aside. Those beyond help are given what little comfort can be spared. Scholars still argue whether Civil War triage systems were truly systematic or largely improvised under pressure. From where you stand, it feels like a mix of both, guided by instinct, experience, and a kind of grim practicality. You gently pull your coat free, offering the man a quick reassurance you're not sure he believes. "I'll come back." You don't know if you will, and that realization sits heavy in your chest as you keep moving. Near one of the larger tents, you notice a different kind of activity, not the frantic urgency of surgery, but something quieter. Rows of men lying still, covered partially with blankets. A few attendants move among them, adjusting positions, offering water, murmuring soft words. Recovery. Or at least the attempt at it. But even here, the atmosphere isn't peaceful. It's fragile. Every breath feels uncertain, like it could be the last or the first step towards something better. You catch a strange, almost surreal detail. Someone has hung a small piece of cloth between two poles, creating a bit of shade. Beneath it, a soldier is carefully shaving another man's face, as if they're back in a barber shop instead of a battlefield. It's oddly intimate and completely out of place. Yet somehow it makes sense. Even here, maybe especially here, people cling to small routines, normal acts that remind them they're still human. You move on. The further you go, the more the scale of it all presses in. Supplies stacked in uneven piles, buckets of water carried back and forth, assistants rushing past you with expressions that mirror your own, focused, tired, slightly overwhelmed, and everywhere, the sound. Not just screams now, but layers of noise, low conversations, quiet prayers, the occasional laugh that feels almost defiant, the rustle of canvas, the clink of instruments, the distant echo of gunfire that reminds you this isn't over, not even close. You pause near one of the wagons that's just arrived. The men unloading it move quickly, their motions practiced. One by one, the wounded are carried down, each revealing a new story written in torn fabric and broken bodies. One soldier is clutching a letter, his grip so tight his knuckles are pale. As they lower him, he refuses to let it go. "Don't lose it. Please, don't lose it." It's such a small thing, a piece of paper. And yet, in this place, it might be the most important thing he has left. You make a mental note to keep an eye on him, though you're not sure why. Maybe because it reminds you that every man here had a life before this, a home, people who knew them as something other than patient or case. It's easy to forget that. Or maybe it's just easier. You turn back toward the surgical tents, knowing that's where you're needed most. The closer you get, the more the familiar intensity returns, the focused urgency, the narrowing of your world. But something has shifted. Stepping outside, even briefly, has shown you the bigger picture. This isn't just about what happens on your table. It's about everything around it, the waiting, the hoping, the losing, the surviving. You're part of a machine much larger than yourself, one that's struggling to keep up with the sheer scale of suffering being fed into it. And yet, somehow, it keeps going. You push back into the tent, the flap falling closed behind you. The smell, the heat, the noise, they all return instantly, like you never left. Another patient is already waiting. Of course he is. You step forward, your movements smoother now, more automatic. The hesitation from earlier has dulled, replaced by something quieter but more dangerous. Acceptance. Not of the situation itself, but of your place within it. You pick up your tools again, barely noticing their weight this time, because now you understand. This isn't a moment, it's a world, and you're fully inside it.
The first time you hear the word infection spoken with real fear, it isn't during surgery. It's whispered afterward, like something that might hear you if you say it too loudly. You're standing near the back of the tent, wiping your hands on a cloth that's already given up pretending to be clean. The work hasn't stopped. It never stops. But something in the rhythm has changed. A different urgency is threading through the chaos now. A surgeon nearby leans in toward another. "Too many cases turning," he mutters. "Smell it?" You don't need to be told what he means. You've started noticing it too. That faint, sweet, rotting odor that clings to certain wounds no matter how much you try to clean them. It's subtle at first, almost easy to ignore, but once you recognize it, it becomes impossible to forget. This is infection, but not in the modern sense you understand now. Germ theory is still not fully accepted in this era. Many doctors believe infection is caused by imbalances in bodily humors or by bad air, what they call miasma. And yet, even without understanding the microscopic cause, they recognize the outcome with terrifying accuracy. Swelling, heat, discoloration, a spreading darkness that seems almost alive. During the American Civil War, infections like gangrene and sepsis killed far more soldiers than bullets ever did. It's a well-documented fact that disease accounted for roughly 2/3 of deaths in the war. Not combat, not explosions, but what happened after the wound was already made. Standing here, that statistic stops being abstract. It becomes faces. You move toward a patient who was operated on earlier. You remember him vaguely, not because of his name, but because of the way he laughed during the procedure. That broken, breathless sound that didn't belong in a place like this. Now, he's silent. Too silent. You pull back the covering slightly. The wound has changed. Not dramatically, not all at once. It's subtle, like something shifting under the surface of reality. The edges of the injury are darkened, the skin around it swollen and discolored. The smell is worse now, thicker, almost sweet in a way that makes your stomach tighten. Someone behind you exhales sharply. "Turning," they say. Just like that, turning, as if the body is something that changes direction on its own. You've already done everything right, or at least everything you know to do. The problem is that right is based on knowledge that's incomplete, inconsistent, and often wrong. Instruments are reused, bandages are washed when possible, but rarely sterilized in any modern sense. Hands are cleaned in water that would itself be considered unsafe today. Scholars still argue whether antiseptic practices, when they began to emerge later in the 19th century, could have drastically reduced these deaths if adopted earlier during wartime conditions. But here, in this moment, that debate feels like it belongs to another universe. You look at the patient again. He opens his eyes slightly. "Doc," he whispers, and you realize something unsettling. He doesn't sound afraid of the wound. He sounds afraid of what it means. There's a quiet understanding in the tent when infection appears. It doesn't always mean immediate death, but it does mean uncertainty has tilted sharply in the wrong direction. A senior surgeon steps in beside you, glancing at the injury. "Clean it again," he says flatly. "And hope." Hope. The word feels almost inappropriate here. Still, you follow orders. Water is brought, cloths, a crude attempt at cleansing what is already slipping beyond control. You work carefully, though carefully feels like a joke now. Everything is careful, and yet nothing is controlled. The patient winces weakly, not screaming anymore, just enduring. That's often how it progresses. The initial chaos of pain gives way to something quieter, a fading resistance. You've seen it enough times already, even this early in your time here, to recognize the pattern forming. And then comes the unsettling part, the waiting. Infection doesn't move quickly in a way that demands immediate action. It lingers, develops, spreads in silence.
It forces you into a kind of helpless observation where your skills feel less like intervention and more like witness. You step back slightly, feeling that familiar tension building in your chest again. This is one of the hardest parts. Not the cutting, not the speed, not even the blood. It's this, watching something continue despite everything you've done. A younger assistant notices your expression. "It happens," he says quietly. "More than you think." You don't respond, not because you disagree, but because you're starting to understand what he means. It does happen more than you think. A lot more. Another voice calls from deeper in the tent. Another crisis. The rhythm pulls you back immediately, not allowing you to stay with any single moment for too long. But as you move, something lingers in your mind, a question you don't say out loud. How many of these men survive the wound only to be lost to what comes after? Outside, the world continues its uneasy balance between order and collapse. Wagons arrive, supplies are distributed. Men are carried in, carried out, carried everywhere except still. You pass a small group of surgeons talking near a crate of instruments. One of them shakes his head. "If only we knew more," he says. That sentence hangs in the air longer than it should, because it implies something dangerous, that knowledge itself is the missing piece, and in this era, that missing piece is everywhere. You glance down at your hands again. They're steady now, not because things are under control, but because you've stopped expecting them to be. And that might be the most unsettling infection of all. Not the one spreading through wounds, but the one spreading through you. Quiet, persistent, changing the way you see everything around you. You step forward toward the next patient, already moving before the thought fully formed. Because here, reflection doesn't save lives, action does. Or at least, that's what you tell yourself.
You start noticing the tools more than the people for a moment, and that's when you realize how far gone your mind is becoming. It happens quietly, subtly. 1 second, you're a thinking, feeling person reacting to suffering, and the next, you're observing patterns, weight, shape, efficiency, the way a blade fits into your grip, the way a saw catches light under a flickering lantern. It's not detachment, it's adaptation. The instruments you use aren't elegant. They aren't designed with comfort or precision in mind like modern surgical tools. They're heavy, practical, and reused until they can't be anymore. Metal darkened from constant washing, wooden handles worn smooth by countless hands before yours. During the American Civil War, surgical kits were standardized only loosely, and many surgeons carried their own sets from station to station. It's a well-documented fact that instruments were often wiped clean between patients, but clean in this era means water, cloth, and sometimes alcohol, not sterilization as we understand it today. And yet, here you are, trusting them with human lives. You pick one up again. It feels familiar now. That's the dangerous part. The more you use something here, the more normal it becomes, even when it shouldn't. A patient is already on the table. You don't remember him being brought in. That's happening more often too. The gaps in memory where your mind simply stops recording the transition between one case and the next. Someone speaks beside you. Shrapnel wound, deep. You nod without fully processing the words. The lantern light shifts, casting long shadows across the table. For a second, the scene looks almost theatrical, like something staged. But the sound pulls you back into reality. The low, uneven breathing, the quiet panic in the man's eyes. And then, the smell. Metallic, damp. Familiar now in a way that makes your stomach tighten less than it used to. You begin. The procedure is messy, not because you're careless, but because the conditions demand it. There is no sterile field, no separation between clean and contaminated. Everything is already compromised before you even begin. You notice something strange again. The way your hands move without instruction now.
Not fully automatic, but guided by memory that didn't exist a few days ago. Muscle learning, shaped by repetition and urgency. That should comfort you. It doesn't, because it means you're changing faster than you expected. A voice calls out behind you. Hold steady. You don't even realize you were hesitating. That's another new thing. Micro pauses you don't consciously choose. Tiny interruptions where your mind briefly resurfaces from the work and tries, unsuccessfully, to process what's happening around you. But there's no space for that here. So, you push forward again. At one point, you notice a small tray nearby holding instruments that look different, slightly refined, cleaner. One of the older surgeons must have brought them. You hear him speaking to another attendant. Trying something new, he says. Read about it in a European journal. A new technique, a new approach, a new idea trying to survive in a place that rarely allows innovation to breathe. This is how change begins here, not with breakthroughs, but with experiments done under pressure. Some will help, many won't, and the consequences are immediate either way. You focus back on your patient. He's still conscious. Barely. His eyes track your movements, not with accusation, but with something quieter. Trust, maybe, or resignation. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. Am I going to lose it? He whispers. The question is simple. The answer never is. You glance at the injury again, already knowing what must be done. Not because you're certain, but because uncertainty has a cost. And here, delay is often worse than action. You're going to be all right, you say automatically. It's the same lie you've told before, but now it feels less like deception and more like procedure. The work continues. Somewhere in the middle of it, you become aware of a rhythm forming around you. Not just your movements, but the entire tense. Surgeons calling for tools, assistants moving between stations, patients arriving in uneven waves. It's almost musical in structure. Chaos, but patterned chaos. And you realize something unsettling. This place has learned how to function inside disaster. Not fix it, not escape it, but operate within it. A system built entirely around managing damage, never eliminating it. You finish the procedure without fully registering the end. One moment you're working, the next you're stepping back and someone else is already taking your place. That's how it goes. No closure, no pause, just transition. You wipe your hands again, though it barely matters. Everything is already stained. Cloth, skin, memory. A junior assistant looks at you briefly. You're faster now, he says. It sounds like praise. It doesn't feel like it, because faster here means you're keeping up. Barely. You glance around the tent. More cases, more movement, more waiting just beyond the edges of what you can handle. And the tools, those cold, indifferent instruments, are already being prepared again, ready for the next cycle, and the next, and the next. You start to understand something you didn't want to learn. The real terror here isn't any single operation. It's repetition. The way it slowly rewrites you without asking permission. And as you step toward the next table, your hands already moving before your thoughts catch up, you realize the truth settling in deeper than anything else so far. You are not just treating the wounded anymore. You are becoming part of the machine that produces survival from suffering. And it is working. Too well.